Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and foreign pigs of all nationalities. I don't know where that came from, and I apologize to all foreign pigs.
And I'm actually going to say that I like how you did that because it is going to flow into the actual episode that we are going to cover today here on the Bunny Rabbit's Hole. And if you don't know, if this is your first time here being in the Bunny Rabbit's Hole, what we do here is myself. I am one of the co-hosts. My name is Jason, and then my co-host cohort.
I am myself, Craig.
Yes. And what we do here together is we pick a central theme each week. We talk about that theme until something in that discussion inspires us to talk about something else for a little bit. You know, a rabbit hole. So we go down those rabbit holes until Craig finally loses his patience or decides that we're going to go on for 4 hours and he gets us back on track. And then we start talking about the topic.
Right. And as Jason said, we pick a central topic. We do research both for and against. And then we include our opinions. And if you're easily offended, there's other podcasts out there for you.
And I'll say, this is an episode that will probably offend a lot of people just because the subject matter of today's episode.
There was a couple times during the research that I got slightly offended.
Right. So without further ado, let's just not keep talking about today's episode. Let's actually talk about today's episode. What are we talking about today?
We are talking about the life and times of the man, the mystic, Mr. Crowley.
Yes. The Great Beast 666, the most wickedest man, and a bunch of other fucking nicknames.
Right.
So the reason I wanted to, I liked how you came into this is because I actually watched a YouTube clip of the reading of excerpts of his book that he writes called The Book of Law.
Right.
And your intro sounded just like that dude reading that book.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was weird. I'm like, wow, he must have done that on purpose. That's cool.
I watched a shit ton of YouTube over the last couple of days and things that were things being read in what I'm assuming they thought was Crowley's voice.
Yeah, it was funny because I watched a lot of this, and it depending on the person that you listen to or the time period of his life, the actor that was portraying him reading or talking, the dialect would change to the time period or his location. Like when he's in Egypt, they kind of gave it like he was from Egypt. Like
right.
Weird because, as we know, he was not from Egypt. He was actually born to a wealthy family in Royal Leamington Spa, Warwickshire, which is somewhere in the Great Britain. Those that live over there, our fans that are there, our listeners that are there, know more about where it is than what I would. I'm just reading it off my notes. But he's born on October 12th, 1875.
Right. It was a spa town in Warwickshire, England. Originally a small village called Leamington Priors, it grew into a spa town in the 18th century. Who cares?
Now, what the hell does that mean, spa town? I mean, is this just like people go and walk around in bathrobes all day?
Yeah, this is the late 1800s, so did they even know what the fuck spas were?
I know they had like mineral baths and bathhouses and stuff, so so it could have been like a place with a whole bunch of prostitutes.
It's like, hey, everybody come here to take a bath.
Which wouldn't have been a bad thing in that time because not everybody did take baths back then.
No, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say Crowley didn't take many.
Oh, I'm sure we'll go into time periods that in his life where I guarantee the entire time period that we're talking about, he did not bathe once. But
and for being such, I mean, because the key thing I learned in my research is how big of a piece of shit this guy was. But for being such a big piece of shit asshole, he influenced so many fucking people that grew to be legends in their field, like Bowie, like Page, like so many, like L. Ron Hubbard,
John Lennon.
Yeah,
he's actually on a Beatles album cover.
Yeah, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. He's on the cover. But I mean, he went on and he influenced all these people, and he was just fucking evil.
He was a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And you know what? We're just gonna get that shit out there right now. He was straight up piece of shit. Now, when we first started this podcast, my wife was standing off the side listening to us for a little bit, and she's like, "Why don't you guys call your show Craig and his narcissistic cousin?" Now, I have narcissistic tendencies, and I speak like that a lot, but I'm like a Smurf in the narcissistic world, and he's like, you know, a Celestial from Marvel. I mean, that's the size difference in the level of narcissism from me to this guy. And yes, right. I realized it was narcissistic to put myself and comparing me to him in the story, but this man was a self-centered, self-righteous, piece of shit.
Yes, even self-loathing at times.
Yes.
Now, it's amazing too, because I mean, we talked about he was born into a wealthy family. They got their money from basically having a brewing company. His father had retired before he was even born. He was his father's first kid.
Mm.
But he was born, like you said, October 12th, 1875, and his father had become a priest. They rejected his fundamental Christians, and he went on to become a Plymouth Brethren, and he would walk around, preaching the word, the Bible and all that stuff, and Crowley would go along with them.
Now, I just want to touch base on the fact that his dad had him so late in life. This is actually not an uncommon practice back then. I know now we're talking about the miracles of modern medicine are allowing people to have children into their 50s or later. We actually have, for those here in America, Zachary Taylor was our president in 1840-ish, but we have grandchildren of his, not great-grandchildren, grandchildren of his still alive today, because he had kids in his 70s. Then that kid had a kid well into his 70s.
Jeez.
And now those kids are in their 60s right now. So it wasn't an uncommon thing back then to have children late in life. I mean, personal beliefs aside, I think it's kind of weird at any time period to have a kid that's, you're not going to see grow up.
Right. And at this time, Aleister was a pretty well-behaved kid. He, reveled in his father's love or whatever, attention, and going around with him. And this is, I don't know why I found this so ironic, but I did. For a man who walks around the world, or not the world, walks around his town or whatever, preaching the gospel, with his mouth, dies of tongue cancer when Aleister is 11 years old.
Right. Yeah. I hate to say that I chuckled at that, but maybe that was like foreshadowing, his father was stricken down because his son will use his voice later on in life. But I thought that was kind of weird. So even though his father had him late in life, he died of cancer, but this was sorry, I just saw you.
I saw a picture because on the Wikipedia page the tongue cancer is in blue, and I put my mouse over it, mouse over it, and it popped up an image. Ugh, don't do that. Don't do that.
All right, won't do that. But yeah, so he's fatherless at age 11,
mm-hmm.
And then shortly thereafter, he gets sick.
Right.
Aleister does.
Yeah.
And at this time, his name is actually Edward Alexander Crowley.
Right.
He's not Aleister Crowley yet. He hasn't changed his name.
Yeah, and after his dad died, like you said, he got sick, but he also started. That was a major turning point in his life because it changed something in him. It made it. That's where the wickedness really started setting in. I mean, his mother started calling him the Beast.
Yes, and part of this too was they pretty much said that Crowley was going to die young, so his uncle kind of almost like pseudo adopted him at this time, and his uncle wanted him to experience things in life before he died. So his uncle would take him into pubs when he was underage and get him drunk. He would allow him to smoke pipe. And then his uncle bought him his first prostitute when he was only 15 years old.
Which he caught an STD from.
Right.
Which was it gonorrhea or syphilis at that time? I can't remember.
One of the two, probably gonorrhea.
Right. Well, and see, it's funny you say that, because of the research I've done, and like I said, I listened to a bunch of podcasts, I listened to a lot of YouTube stuff, and did some reading. And the uncle figure in some is that, you know, just like you said, you wanted him to enjoy life, and in others was a very strict, you know, very strict man that said, no, this is how it's got to be, and da-da-da-da-da.
Right. So, yeah. So everybody knows that child that they went to school with that grew up with super strict parents, and then as soon as they get a little bit of freedom, they just balls to the wall, just fucking like lose their shit.
Right.
I knew a kid that was like that, and then as soon as he went off to college, he got so drunk and puked so hard, he popped corpuscles in his eyes. So his eyes were completely red.
Right. Well, and it's around this time, too, when he moved in with his uncle, where he started getting skeptical about Christianity and pointing out inconsistencies in the Bible to his religious teachers. Then he would start, like you said, smoking, masturbating, having sex with prostitutes, and it was gonorrhea that he got. I mean, they had him made, and he had such a hatred at this time for his mother, because of her hardcore religion that he no longer believed in, that he banged the maid in his mom's bed. His mom found out, fired the maid. The maid turned out to be a prostitute and is believed to be Jack the Ripper's first victim.
Yeah, because Crowley claimed it was Jack the Ripper's first victim, and he also claimed to know the Ripper personally.
Right.
He said that he was an occultist. But yeah, not only did he have sex with their maid in the mom's bed, but the family destroys the maid for this. I mean, yeah, she probably, you know, shouldn't sleep with
young boys.
Yeah, but they destroyed her reputation to the point where she could not get hired anywhere else, and her only option at that point was to turn to sex work.
Right.
So, but yeah, it was interesting that you know, and Crowley was a compulsive liar. So the whole part about being Jack the Ripper's first victim, you know, he was probably talking out his ass.
Right.
Knowing Jack the Ripper personally, he was probably talking out his ass. Well,
and it's funny too, because I'm gonna go back to his illness. What he had was called albuminuria, and that is a pathological condition wherein the protein albumin is abnormally present in the urine. Sorry, folks, I'm not feeling good. I'm trying. It is a type of proteinuria. Albumin is a major. Basically, he had bad shit in his pee.
Oh, okay.
That could lead to kidney disease. Oh, and the doctor said he wasn't going to live throughout the year. And then his uncle took him on all this shit and taught him how to climb mountains and stuff. And that's when he started mountain climbing too. Was at that time.
Yes.
And then he lived a long fucking time.
Yeah. For somebody who wasn't supposed to live a year, he ends up living to be 72. But we'll go into that part later.
Right.
So.
Oh, sorry.
After that, he claims to have this war between God and he claims that God and Satan had like this war over his soul.
Right.
Which kind of changed his whole mindset on everything. And then he had this quote, which I don't understand what it means, but that it says that there was I was in my formative years. I am the death struggle of God and Satan. Fought for my soul for those three hours. God conquered. Now I only have one doubt left. Which of the twain was God?
Right. Right.
Now, because instantly my mind goes to Mark Twain. I'm like, what the fuck did he do about this?
Right. Well, and through, I think this is where Bowie got his cocaine diet from Crowley too.
Mm. Yeah, because if you don't know, there was like a 2-year period where David Bowie drank milk, ate peppers, and did a shitload of cocaine, and that's what he survived on for like 2 years. He wrote 2 albums in this time period. He doesn't remember recording.
Yeah.
Let alone writing and all the other shit. He recorded 2 albums. He doesn't fucking remember. Anyway, back to Crowley.
Right. So they sent him off to boarding school. All that bullshit. He ends up getting kicked out, doesn't he? I thought he got kicked out getting an STD.
Right.
That's a fucked up way to get kicked out of school. Hey, Teach. I'm peeing green.
Yeah, I got the drip.
Yeah, you're expelled.
Bye-bye. Well, that's not how. Well, so then after that, he ends up going to. He finally does graduate high school, and then he's sent away to go to live at Cambridge. Which, if for Americans and those that don't know, Cambridge is like America's Harvard. It's a fucking great school, and it's expensive, and obviously Crowley was. And the reason I'm bringing this part up is Crowley was genius level IQ.
Right.
This guy was incredibly intelligent. He was an asshole, but he was also really smart. So this wasn't one of those things where he just bought his way into Cambridge. Probably part of which, but he was legitimately a student at Cambridge.
Material, right? Well, and at 21, he got his inheritance from his father. I believe it was 21. But anyways, I can't remember how much it was then, but he equated out to like $500,000 today.
Okay.
So back in that time, was that's what he had. So he wasn't hurting for money or anything.
No.
And he was just basically. I don't know. Because you and I were both fans of theology.
Mm-hmm.
We both read on a bunch of different theologies, and I guess in this instance, I kind of admire Crowley, however you want to say it, but because of the fact that he had that same thirst or that same wanting of that, but he just went a little bit too far.
Yeah. So Crowley was also in this time period. Part of him going like this, he was also conflicted because during this time period, he also starts realizing that he's bisexual.
Right.
And he gets infatuated with a classmate named Herbert Charles Pollitt. But Herbert Charles also had a alter ego, which was Diane de Ruggie, which Herbert would dress up in drag, and Crowley was enamored with the persona that Herbert created. And he wrote poems and all kinds of shit. But he realized that by being bisexual, that was also a slight towards religion.
Right.
So he reveled in the idea that he could fuck over Christianity even more in his personal turmoil if he was, in fact, having sex with men and women.
Right. And then their relationship ended because Pollitt didn't share Crowley's increasing interest in Western esotericism. And it's apparently a breakup that Crowley would regret for many years.
The one that got away.
Yeah.
Herbert, a.k.a. Diane.
Right.
He knew that it was his motivation to reject Christianity in the eyes of the church because his love for Herbert was considered to be an abomination.
Right. Right. And excuse me. And that was like in 1897. And then later in the same year, he travels to Russia. He was claiming that he was trying to learn Russian and was considered being a future diplomat there because when you go to Cambridge, you usually come out in some sort of political career back at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Really interesting. I listened to an interview with Richard Spence, who has written a bunch of books on Crowley.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about Crowley being a spy for the British.
Right.
And his idea is that when he went to Russia, that he was going there to do, intelligence work for the British.
Yeah. But one of the things I heard, it was, I think it was one of the podcasts I listened, or one of the YouTube videos I watched on this, where the guy said it was more like Pink Panther style espionage as it was a James Bond.
Right.
Which I thought was pretty damn funny.
Yep.
But shortly after that, Crowley meets a group of inspiring wizards.
Yes. Doug, would that be the Golden Dawn?
That is the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn.
At least they didn't call it the Golden Shower.
Right. Well, which probably was part of their rituals because
they were freaks.
They were freaks. But some of the members that were part of this group were William Butler Yeats, who was a poet, and Bram Stoker, who wrote the book Dracula.
Right.
Which, coincidentally, actually, which is kind of funny because a lot of people refer to Crowley as a hack in a lot of his writings. They refer to him as a hack, but a lot of people refer to Bram Stoker as a hack.
Right.
Because there was just shit thrown. If you've ever read Dracula, there's no reason to have an American cowboys in that book.
No, there really isn't.
Other than just to try to get the American audience to read your book. There's no reason for Americans to even be in there.
Well, at this time, too, Crowley was writing all sorts of, like, erotic poetry and stories and stuff like that. But he had to publish them in foreign countries under a different name because it was illegal at the time.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I saw that was that he may have learned how to create false personas and disguises when he was working as a spy for the British government. But so he used disguises to, he used a pen name to write to write this poetry. But when he first came to the Golden Dawn, his very first meeting, he disguised himself and introduced himself as Count of Vladimir. And he had apparently had a really bad Russian accent, and he had a fake mustache, but he's only 21, 22 years old at this time.
Right.
And he's just got a baby face, and he's trying to act and be older than what he was, but nobody took the bait.
Right. And he also, while he was in the Golden Dawn, he met Julian Baker because they both shared the common interest in alchemy. Then Baker introduced Crowley to his brother-in-law, George Cecil Jones. He was also a member. Didn't he? At some point, and I want to say it was around this time, it might be a little bit later. It might be when he discovered sex magic, where he actually spent time as somebody's wife for like a year.
Mm.
I wanted to say it was the Bennett dude, but I don't think so.
I think it's
basically they went out in the desert and tried to fuck the devil into existence.
Right.
But that'll come later.
Yeah, there's multiple times where he tries to open a portal, bring the devil here. Now,
yeah, and he started learning about these in the Golden Dawn because they would perform the rituals of Goisha, which is a practice that includes the conjuration of demons, specifically the ones summoned by the biblical figure King Solomon.
Yes. So yeah, One of the interesting things I found about the Golden Dawn and Crowley at this point was it was forbidden for people to pay others within the order to teach you different magic. It was forbidden, but somehow this goes back to Crowley's ability to manipulate and get people to do whatever the fuck he wants. Because
Right.
he actually got members to teach him magic that was above the level that he was at. Now,
Right.
it's kind of like think of the Golden Dawn as like karate. You start off as a white belt, then you move to yellow, and then you work your way up to get to black belt. But you're not breaking the bricks as a white belt on your first day.
Right.
So
for those watching, hold on a second. Where'd it go?
Oh, there we go.
Do you see the symbol?
Yes.
Look how intricate that is.
There's a lot of detail there. There's a lot of shit going on.
Yeah, I mean, look at all the symbology in it.
Mm-hmm. I'm seeing Jewish. I'm seeing pagan. I'm seeing.
There's some Celtic.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's Egyptian in it. Yeah, right down here at the bottom.
Down at the bottom.
Yep. Oh man, this is weird. Because now I got to figure out how to get back. Go ahead and start talking. I'll get this shit figured out.
Right on. Go back up towards the top of the.
Got it.
Yeah, there we go. So where was I at? Anyway, you weren't allowed to learn spells that were above your grade. So if you were a red belt, you can't learn brown belt moves yet. So, but Crowley was new into the whole thing, so he's like a yellow belt, but he's actually learning the shit from at the upper ends of this thing. He's learning these huge rituals that and a lot of the rituals were kind of cool because they're based in philosophy and yoga and Kabbalah and
wasn't this Mathers guy that was teaching him this shit?
Yeah, Mathers was one of them.
He was like the head honchos. Mathers was.
They didn't like, so they didn't really like Crowley because they realized that Crowley was going to use, he performed black magic rituals, and they figured that the more knowledge that he gained, he would actually start using this stuff for personal gain, for evil purposes. And that's not what they were really about.
Right. I mean, he even got into, him and Yeats just would feud constantly.
Yes.
But, going back to, while you're collecting your thoughts there, going back to when you were talking about how intelligent he is, he's learning this stuff because he's smart enough to know how to work people. He's smart enough to know how to get people to like him, to turn on charisma when it's needed, to turn it off when it's not, and to use that to manipulate certain people. I mean, he didn't give a shit about Yeats because Yeats wasn't in charge, but Mathers was the founder of the Golden Dawn. So he used those powers of persuasion on Mathers to get Mathers to like him, so that way he can learn all that shit.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I mean, if there was a medal for playing the game, Crowley would definitely get this. He would get the merit badge.
Right. It wouldn't just be a participation trophy. He would get this huge fucking golden medal that figured in his head.
Yeah, and so the one thing that I thought was interesting, though, when you said you did you found the translation from the wealth that his father gave him to current dollars. He was buying homes, traveling the world, doing all this shit, and 500 grand isn't going to go far today. Right. So,
but back then, but he was buying homes and he was renting them out. He was getting more income coming in.
Yeah, and then
so he had what we'd call today a passive income.
Yeah. So it's interesting that he, I'm almost envious to the point where he could just pick up and just go and do whatever the fuck he wanted when he wanted. But right around at this time, he actually meets his first wife.
Right. Good old Rose. Is that her name?
Yeah. Rose Edith Kelly was his first wife. Now, actually, I sorry, I skipped ahead.
Yeah, because we had good old Elaine Simpson there first.
Yeah, I skipped. Sorry, I skipped ahead. But
well, basically, to sum up what you skipped over, it's they were having a falling out under Mather's orders. Crowley and Elaine Simpson snuck into the vault, took it over, and then wouldn't let any of the other order in. They took it to court. The judge said, "No, they paid the rent. It's not yours. Get the fuck out."
Yeah, but what he ended up doing at that time was actually kind of funny because he sneaks in and he changed all the locks.
Right.
And then when they tried to get in, he was sitting there laughing at them. But
yeah, basically the threat your parents always tell you.
Yeah.
Can't wait for you to leave. I'm changing the fucking locks.
So one of the things that he did to get these members to teach him was he, in these different homes that he was buying, he was allowing them to stay in these places rent free.
Right.
So that was kind of the payment. He wasn't actually paying them to do it, but he was paying them to get the knowledge.
Right.
But shortly. So before we get to the whole part of his first wife, Rose Edith,
right,
he buys an estate on Loch Ness.
Yes.
So Loch Ness, you don't know. Everybody knows Loch Ness. It's where the monster lives, the Loch Ness monster, Nessie. There's tons of. We might even do a cryptid episode on Nessie and some of the other creatures that are in lagoons.
Right.
But he buys this home and decides that he wants to do a ritual called the Abramelin.
Mm-hmm.
That ritual. Now this thing takes like 6 months.
Yeah.
To do, and you basically that's all you can do is this ritual. You get up, you start the ritual, you go through this whole shit for hours every day. You eat, you go to bed, you do it again the next day.
Right.
And so, like they said, there was like 5.5 months into the 6-month ritual, he got bored and quit.
Right.
But when they said that he did this, it actually opened up a portal to hell within the house.
Right.
And a lot of bad shit has happened in the world since he's done this particular ritual. We had both world wars. We had unsettled. There's a lot, plagues and all this other shit have happened. They all say that if you go back in history to when he quit doing this ritual, they're blaming him for a lot of the shit that happened.
Yeah.
Even though it's not. I mean, fuck, you can't say that's true. But years later, Led Zeppelin guitarist Jimmy Page actually bought the estate.
Right.
And Page claims it is in fact haunted.
Yeah, he says there's a demon living there.
Yes. So, I mean, that's the ultimate ghost hunter places right there.
Right. And, Crowley developed his own religion, too, based off the Golden Dawn and stuff called Thelema or something. Thelema, that's it. And, but that's after he develops that after he meets Rose, his first wife, and because when they went on their honeymoon, they went to Cairo.
Yeah.
And while they were sleeping, she had these visions, and she woke up and told him, and I guess she kept saying, over and over, they're waiting for you. And he asked her, who's they?
Mm-hmm.
And he basically said it was Horus, and she said the equinox of the gods has come. And he didn't believe her, so he took her to the museum she's never been to.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, okay, whoever you saw, take me to them. So she does. She takes him to the statue of Horus, which was the exhibit number 666. The number of the beast, the star of revealing, all that shit that Crowley is, and it was Horus, and that's who had talked to her. So, go ahead. I'm gonna let you take over now.
Okay, so if you don't know Horus, Horus is basically the Egyptian Christ. So, if you look at the story of Horus, he was born of a virgin mother. He died and rose 3 days later. He was everything that is the Horus story is parallel to the Jesus story. So a lot of people do believe the fact that the story of Jesus Christ is actually a retelling of the Horus story, because Horus, that story is 2,000 years before Jesus.
Right.
So
and that was probably based off another story that was like 2,000 years before that.
Right. Exactly. I mean, a lot of the stories that are in the Bible are actually retelling of older stories. So if you get, it's like today, if you go to the movies and you see two children that are falling in love, but their families are feuding, it's just a retelling of Romeo and Juliet. But Romeo and Juliet was probably a retelling of some play that Shakespeare had seen in the past. And there is another play that was Romeo and something. It wasn't Juliet, but it's essentially the same play that was written before Shakespeare's credit to Romeo and Juliet. So even though those stories are they're retelling, but Horus is the main deity in for Egypt. There's Ra, the sun god, and there's a bunch of others, but Horus is like Christ. And it's the easiest way to put it. So when she said that Horus, who she didn't really know who that was speaking to her, this freaked him out.
Right.
Actually, it didn't really not freaked him out like, oh my God, well, that's kind of weird. It freaked him out in the matter. He was pissed.
Yeah, because they were talking to her, not him.
Yeah, and that's why he took her in there. But what she ends up saying was, no, they want to talk to you, and they're going to translate or transmit this book. Essentially, you're going to transcribe it, and that became his book that we mentioned earlier, the Book of Law.
Right, and he did it in 3 days from this voice that he named Aiwas.
Yes.
Which is interesting because, you go back to a lot of mysticism and stuff like that, and stuff that we talk about with law of attraction and shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that they always say is, I am. That is the name of God. The name of God is I am. And I was. It's almost like I was.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm probably drawing shit that's not there, but it's interesting.
It's there's merit to that, because when you start thinking about shit like this, when I start researching, like, especially this occultist stuff, like Crowley or the Nazis, the Nazi occultists like Himmler, so like you start seeing shit that you took for granted in TV shows and movies and music, and the shit that we grew up watching.
Right.
Start looking at this stuff and it's like, holy fuck, I'm learning about this because I have the internet and I have movies that are coming to me. How the hell did they learn about this shit?
They read a lot.
And they're passing books back and forth. I mean, I have an app on my phone that has like a couple hundred different occult books on it. It's a free app. They're all PDFs, but I'm going through just trying to soak up all this knowledge. But I have it in my hand. I mean, they have to actually go out and find these books somewhere.
And at that time, those books were huge and heavy.
Yeah. The grimoires and tomes.
Yeah.
So I think that's why he went to or sought out a group like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn because they had all this knowledge already.
Right.
They already had the grimoires and the tomes and all this shit.
Right. Well, and like we said, it took him 3 days to write this book that was transcribed in his head by the voice that he claimed was Aiwass. And he became, and this is where Thelema, I lost it again already.
Thelema, yeah.
Thelema. This is where Thelema came from. He was basically the prophet of this.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the famous quotes from the Book of the Law is, "Do what thou wilt, and shall the whole of the whole of the law." So basically, do what you want.
Right.
Which kind of became the basis of the Church of not Scientology too, but the Church of Satan, because Anton LaVey based his whole religion off of being selfish. It's not about worshiping the devil. It's about you are your own deity. So a lot of the stuff is actually kind of really, it's live the life of Crowley. And that's what the Book of Law was do what you want.
Well, what I want is not eating shit and like having sex in front of children and
menstrual blood. Lots of menstrual blood.
Yeah, that's some fucked up shit. I'm sick to my stomach just thinking about it.
So we probably won't go into what the rituals were.
Right. Just a lot of butt fucking.
Yeah. A lot of butt fucking, a lot of LSD, a lot of menstrual blood. Mm-hmm. He was fond of menstrual blood.
Yes. He was a sick bastard. But on a side note, because we're talking about all the cult shit with him, but I want to go back to the mountaineering part of him.
Yeah.
He was one of the first that climbed K2, correct?
Yes.
And did it a couple. He did a bunch of these escapades where he was mountain climbing with people, and at one point, they went up, and I think it was on K2, and he was with a group, and they basically mutinied from him because they just didn't like the way he was treating people.
Yeah.
They decided to take off at night. He warned them that it wasn't a good idea because it was dangerous. And then was it an avalanche or something?
It was an avalanche, yeah. There was a photographer with him named Jules Jaco de Guillermo, and he hated the way that Crowley was treating everybody. He was just a prick, which Crowley was a prick. But when they decided, enough is enough, we're not going to make it to the summit, we're just getting the fuck away from this guy, they decided to leave. Crowley's like, don't do it. It's going to get dark. Bad shit's going to happen. But from some of the people that stayed with Crowley, they claim that he was in his tent the whole time trying to conjure a demon to do harm to the people that left. And supposedly the ritual ended as the avalanche took out the party.
So he basically came at that point.
Yes.
Oh, this is before the sex magic. Sorry. Blood sugar baby. It's tragic. Sex magic.
So it ended up killing a whole bunch of porters. I didn't see that it killed any of the actual party members. I mean, obviously porters are party members, but they're porters and Sherpas.
Right. In their term, they weren't significant.
Right. Yeah. But it killed I guess it said several.
Yeah. Well, and he's just a sick freak, man. This guy, he traveled all over the fucking world.
Yes.
And then, and there's rumors that, he, like we touched on earlier, and listen to some stuff by Richard Spence and read some of his books. But he talks about Crowley's basically working in New York as a British spy to try to get the United States into the war.
Yeah.
And he was writing propaganda and stuff like that. And then he got basically disowned by Britain, so he started writing German propaganda.
Right. He wrote for a pro-German paper called The Fatherland.
Right. But Spence believes that, the whole getting disowned from Britain thing was basically an act. And Crowley was a spy, and so he got into that magazine to learn more about the Germans to turn that information over to the Britain.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
because he was never charged as a treasonous or
Well, and like Spence had pulled up paperwork from that time period, basically criminal record and shit like that. And there was like something basically redacted about, working for Britain. Basically, it implied that he was working for Britain the entire time he was in the U.S.
Gotcha.
So, yeah. But I mean, and then, all of his traveling, Spence has a reasoning for why he was in each place as a spy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's interesting because if you go to the Wikipedia page that I'm on, it's like every time he travels somewhere, then it goes back to what Spence said, that reason why he was there.
Oh.
Like when he said he went to Russia so he could become a diplomat, Spence said he was sent there to learn more about the Russians.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting, and I keep stuttering, and that's irritating, but it would really make sense, especially those conspiracy theorists out there. This is something that you guys could probably run with and have a lot of fun with.
Right.
And I'm surprised you haven't.
Yeah. No, before this, really, I never really put any credence or never really even thought about. I just thought the whole spy thing was just kind of like nonsense. A lie that he said.
I'm actually going to pull up the video. I'll have you write it down so you can put it into your notes.
Mm-hmm.
It was wow, there's a whole bunch of shit on Aleister Crowley on here today. It was Richard Spence on Aleister Crowley, and the channel is TH Kelly, KELLY 67. And he wrote a book called Secret Agent 666, Aleister Crowley, British Intelligence, and the Occult.
Nice. Those are definitely some cool call letters. Is 666 License to Kill?
Yeah, must be.
Must be. So after he does the whole dictating of the Book of Law, and he starts the religion theme of Thelema. I'm fucking it up.
Got you.
He basically starts getting a following for, like you said before, he's now the prophet of Thelema. But he started getting a following, and he created like a side order to the Order of the Golden Dawn.
Right, because every order's got to have like 16 side orders. I mean, just look at the Masons.
Yeah, oh, right.
And basically, this is basically the same type of structure as the Masons, and I believe Freemasonry was actually tied to this at one point.
Yeah, he was a Mason too.
Right.
Crowley was a Mason, so.
Right, but yeah, going on to the Spence thing, I'm gonna jump in real quick.
Yeah.
When Crowley went to China, I think it was China. Spence suggested that his trip to China was orchestrated as part of British intelligence scheme to monitor the region's opium trade. So therefore, Crowley took it upon himself to smoke opium throughout the entire time he was there. But while he was on the way, he spent much time on spiritual magic work, reciting the Bornless ritual, invocation to his holy guardian angel on a daily basis.
Mm.
And at this point, while he's traveling, Rose and his daughter Lilith, returned to Europe, where I believe Lilith passed away.
Yeah, she passed away at the age of 2.
Yeah, this guy not only was he a piece of shit, he was a horrible fucking parent, named his kids fucked up shit, and just being a child of Crowley is like a good way to shorten your lifespan.
Right. I just have a hard time with the whole being that selfish that you walk away from your child.
Yeah, me too.
But so when he started up this side project to the Golden Dawn, he had people in it. Namely, there was a bunch of people that people would recognize, but the one I want to talk about is an artist named Austin Spare.
Okay.
Now, if you don't know who Spare was, he was an occultist, he was an artist, but he also was the one who pretty much created chaos magic.
Right.
Which is an offshoot of
he's kind of a pretty boy too.
Yeah. So there's the right hand, the left hand, and then there's chaos magic when it comes to magic.
Yeah.
The right hand, I might be getting these backwards, is very stylized, very ritual, very Golden Dawn. Okay. The left hand, which was Crowley's Thelemic version, which was a lot of sex and a lot of, it's still theatrical, but it was more flesh.
Right.
There's a lot more to it. This is very simplistic, but then chaos magic is something in between where you just pull parts of the others that you need for that particular moment in time.
Right. So that leads me to something interesting, because you bring up Crowley, you bring up words that pop out are the occult, him running a cult, but I mean realistically, the difference between a cult and religion is just the views of society.
Yeah. Now the FBI actually has a legitimate standard for being considered a cult leader.
Yeah.
And it's basically you have to be a charismatic person that's easily manipulates others to do your will, and then basically you get funded by them, and there's a lot more to it than that, but Crowley pretty much checks all these boxes off.
Oh yeah.
Before he actually starts his cult, which he does do here in a little bit. Right.
Well, and he also wrote some more books based off basically they're the holy books of Thelema.
Mm-hmm.
Was it the Book of Lies was one of them?
Lies was one of them, yeah.
Yeah.
And
I started listening to an audio version of that, and I think I got like 25 minutes into it, and I turned it off.
Yeah.
For one, as we know, back then they spoke a different English than what we speak now. And they wrote in a different English than what we write in now.
Correct.
So it's difficult, but once your brain gets used to it, it's not difficult anymore. It's just taking it. But just the shit that he was saying, that I was like, fuck this shit.
I listened to excerpts of the Book of Law earlier today, and it's in that proper style English, but the tone that the person had was like it didn't matter what they were reading. They could have been reading like the latest Jack Reacher novel, the latest Jason Bourne book, but
right.
It would have been boring as fuck listening to this person do the audiobook for it. It didn't matter what they were saying. It was, this guy's tone was just monotone.
Yeah. One of Crowley's quotes is, "Intolerance is evidence of impotence."
Nice.
So I'm sorry, I jumped us off track again.
No, that's cool. So shortly when all this is going on, and right after the death of his daughter, his wife is a full-blown raging alcoholic, and Crowley has her committed at this point, committed to prostitution. And his other daughter, he left to the care of boarding schools and nannies. So I don't think he ever saw her again.
Right. Well, and I mean this quote right here sums up how he feels and how I feel about the Bible. One would go mad if one took the Bible seriously, but to take it seriously, one must be already mad.
Right.
Did you get you like my proper English there?
I did. That was good. That was good. You know what? I think I heard the voice of Crowley from one of those YouTube things being channeled through you at that moment.
Right. And yeah, AWAS was like trying to fight for space, but I wouldn't let her in.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Where are we at? Sorry, folks.
Rose fell into a deep depression. She got asylum for neurological damage from her alcoholism. That's how he got her
baby, though.
What?
She had a second baby, though.
Yeah. Yeah, the first one dies, and then the second one was left to nannies in boarding schools.
Okay, yep.
So he never sees that second one again. I'm pretty sure he doesn't see her again. But then they finally get divorced in 1909.
Yeah, and this is what I love this. Because divorce was so hard to get at that time, Crowley basically said, because of my adultery, I want a divorce.
Right. Because I'm the bad one.
Right.
Yeah. Oh. So right after this, he really gets into getting a following.
Right.
So here's where he starts his own commune in Italy.
Oh yeah.
It was a villa in Italy that they called the Abbey. Now there's a video online today. It's on YouTube that you can go see where a guy actually walks through it, and some of the artwork is still on the walls today.
Oh wow!
Because after they left, well, I'll get to that in a minute.
After they were kicked out.
After they were kicked out, the building would remain vacant, and it's still been vacant. It's still vacant today.
Would you want to be there?
No. So one of the things that they did was, this was kind of like the best way I could really say it would be the Manson family living on Spawn Ranch with a lot more magic.
Right.
Because there was a lot of drugs, a lot of orgies, but they had children running around.
Right. And at that time, and right before they got to Abbey, Crowley was destitute, and he was back in London, and he started suffering from asthma, so a doctor prescribed him heroin.
Which,
yeah.
Actually, so if you don't know, heroin was a drug of choice for doctors. And I have this is an actual Bayer Pharmaceutical poster, and you can clearly say aspirin and heroin are two of the main things that they're trying to sell.
Wow. Black top, baby.
Right. So
chasing the dragon.
Exactly. And not unlike today, where we just give people different forms of heroin in pill form.
Right.
Doctors just straight up gave it to them, and they smoked it and did whatever they could.
And it was at this time where he started discovering sex magic too, and that's what they're doing at the Abbey.
Yes. So with this was just a shitload of orgies that were fueled by heroin and LSD. And the sick part about this whole thing is there's these huge, massive orgies going on all the time. There's naked children running around at this time.
Disease.
But one of the things that Crowley would do for his followers here was he was trying to get them to not fear.
Right.
So he would dose them up with LSD, put them in this dark room that had pictures of demons and stuff like that Crowley painted himself on the walls, and he'd make them sit in this dark room with a candle and just in all these images on the wall,
Right.
tripping balls.
Right. And it was, you talk about his followers, and while they're at the Abbey, I mean, one of his followers was a silent film star, Jane Wolfe. She was a big figure in magic and the occult at the time, but also a movie star. Then you have Cecil Frederick Russell, who often argued with Crowley because he didn't like the same-sex sexual magic. He basically didn't want to get fucked in the ass.
Right.
But I think the real turning point came when a guy, Raoul Loveday, moved to the Abbey with his wife, Betty May. And while Raoul just loved Crowley and was devoted to Crowley, his wife fucking hated him. She said that Loveday was made to drink the blood of a sacrificed cat, and they were required to cut themselves with razors every time they used the pronoun I, which makes no sense. Thou do what thou wilt.
Yeah.
But he drank from a polluted stream and developed a liver infection, resulting in his death. And she claimed it was because he drank the cat's blood, but the autopsy came back and said, nah, it's because of this other shit. But you guys are doing some fucked up shit there, so...
But we're not going to get rid of the fact that you drank cat's blood.
Right.
And then at this point, they find out that also that just drinking cat's blood wasn't the only thing that they're doing. They're actually doing more animal sacrifices and engaging in bestiality.
Right. And you know what? Nothing pisses off a fascist dictator like Mussolini more than fucking a dog. So he's booting your ass out of there at that point. You fucked a dog, you're gone. I don't give a shit about kids. I don't give a shit about drinking cat's blood. You fucked a dog.
So they were kicked out. They were banned from ever returning to the Abbey, and to this day, it is believed to be haunted, and it is still abandoned.
Right. And I mean, Crowley had every fucking disease you could think of. I mean, and they. I think we kind of skipped over the OTO.
Yeah, we did.
Which is Ordo Templi Orientis, which is basically an offshoot of Thelema. Fuck it, I can't say it. It's Thelma and Louise, okay? That's what I'm calling it from now on. Yeah, Thelma, goddamn motherfucking Louise.
Yeah, the OTO is really where that's where it's based off of his book, The Book of Lies, and this is where they really started engaging in sex magic. They what was it? They did a lot of stuff with Baphomet, which is it's like the scales of justice for the occult. It's everybody's seen the image. It's a goat head, goat-headed figure with one arm up, one arm down, sitting on a throne.
Right. Well, and this is crazy because like his favorite U.S. city was New Orleans, but yet he never got into voodoo.
That's weird because it was definitely in New Orleans at this time.
Yeah, and what he was doing was really similar to voodoo, especially with sex magic and stuff like that. Sacrifice chicken.
Exactly. Santeria and whatnot.
Right.
So
I ain't got a crystal ball.
So while he's his favorite city was New Orleans, but he had Christian relatives that lived in Titusville, Florida, which I thought was kind of weird that they would still admit the fact that he was related somehow.
Right. Well, and there's also there was some myths spread around that he was the grandfather of Barbara Bush.
Oh.
But he is not.
Okay.
Yeah, it was rumored because her her grandmother during that time period was running around the same circles as Crowley.
Huh. I didn't find that. That's awesome.
Yeah. But so there was rumors that, that she could possibly be the granddaughter of Crowley, but she's not. Because, according to Richard Spence, she's not.
Okay.
And he's pretty much the expert on Crowley for me at this point.
Which I get. I understand.
I mean, he wrote several books on him, so, I mean, he went deeper down that rabbit hole than I could. I couldn't fucking do it.
Yeah, I don't think I could. There's only so much of this I can take, especially when you start hearing the stories of him taking people out into the desert, trying to conjure up demons out in the desert. He takes a man out in the desert. I forgot the dude's name. I can't find it in my notes, but
I want to say it was Bennett.
Maybe it was, but 2 men leave. 1 man comes back. The other man comes back a shell of a man. He's insane.
Right.
Crowley spent 3 days fucking this man in the ass and making this man fuck him in the ass in a magic circle, claiming that he had to stay within the circle because there were demons running around it, and Crowley was in and out of the circle the whole time, and the man was stuck in the circle not knowing what the hell's going on there. Crowley has pumped him full of all sorts of narcotics and a lot of LSD, and then he's raping the man repeatedly, and he comes back insane.
Right.
Don't give a shit.
Okay. Not only is that just fucked up, but can we talk about the amount of sand in the desert?
Yeah.
And the friction that would cause.
Oh. There were some burns. There's got to be a lot of burns in there.
It must have hit home somewhere, because when I mentioned how much sand was in the desert, my wife guffawed.
There's a lot of sand in the snapper.
Well, and he even took a trip to Detroit. Did you know that?
Wow.
Yeah, in Detroit, he experimented with peyote at Park Davis.
Because when I think peyote, I think Detroit.
Right. Well, Michigan was a major native formed state, Native American formed state.
Yeah.
So, and that's usually, but yeah, I think peyote, I'm thinking of, Arizona.
Right. New Mexico, Arizona, Utah,
right.
Something like that.
Warm climate. Dry, arid climate. That's what.
While he's now we're talking about him being in the United States. This is where he actually meets rocket scientist Jack Parsons and at this time, little known science fiction writer L. Ron Hubbard.
Right.
And if you don't, Jack Parsons is the man. He's the co-creator of NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. This man was smart, but he was also really into the occult, and he really liked, which I guess, he ends up working with a lot of former SS officers in NASA, Werner von Braun and a bunch of others that came over here in Operation Paperclip. They all were into the occult.
Well, which kind of leads me to think, you think about, and this might be something that we need to do some research on, but okay, you think of the occult and names that come to mind are Crowley, extremely intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
You also think of Tesla, extremely intelligent. Didn't Einstein dabble a little bit?
Probably.
But all of these genius level intelligent people are attracted to the occult.
Yeah. What's
the tie-in?
Intelligence?
Maybe. Being intelligent enough to question Christianity and the ongoing accepted religions.
There's probably something more out there, and it's the thirst for knowledge.
Right.
Which
and I mean it goes back to I would say that you and I are fans of theology because we haven't done extensive research in it, but we have done a lot of reading on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I read books on Buddhism, Zen, and all these other things. I've studied. I even learned about Jehovah's Witnesses and shit. That shit. But I find all this stuff interesting.
I I had a conversation years ago with some people. They were talking about Satanists, and then they kept mentioning the Church of Satan, Church of Satan. Now, this was in their little religious thing. So I opened up a dialogue with them about, it's like, do you understand what their ideologies are, what their philosophies are? Well, they just worship the devil. It's like, well, actually, they don't. The Church of Satan doesn't worship the devil. They don't even believe in the devil. You're your own deity. You're God. It's all about being selfish. And they sat there and just kind of listened, and then you could see it in their face that, if that's true, then, what have I been talking? So what have I been hearing? Why is this wrong? Why everybody keeps saying this? When I show them the website, and you can see there's 11 commandments, because they have to have one more than Christ does. But what I was trying to get to them is, know your enemy. You should know everything about what you're combating against. It's a simple debate. If you're going to do a pro and a con, you have to know all of the opposing sides to win a debate.
Right.
So you have to know what the questions are, the answers to the questions beforehand.
Right.
But when you just go off half-cocked about, and this isn't just about religion, this is anything. If you just start going half-cocked about your viewpoint, and then your counterpoint to why you don't like the other side is wrong to start with, then everything else that you're saying is wrong too.
Right.
Because it's not based on facts.
Right. Well, and you and I have talked about, and Crowley talks about how the Bible contradicts itself. And you look at these people with genius level IQs, and look at them, and I think what ties them into the occult is the fact that because their mind analyzes everything so deeply, they question why. They can't blindly follow something like people of, and I'm sorry, this is going to sound insulting, but someone of a lower IQ could. Will just blindly follow a religion and never ask why.
Yeah.
These guys are asking why.
Right. And that's why when you see people that give everything that they have to cults, usually they're found either they have a lower than normal IQ to begin with, or they're in such a spot of desperation that any glimmer of hope helps.
Right.
So there's two types of people that join cults. There's the dumb and the desperate.
Well, there's three. Recovering drug addicts.
Oh yeah. They're
go sell it level.
Yeah, they're looking for, they have a void they have to fill.
Right.
But but we're going back to an intelligence. The two people that I mentioned just a minute ago, Parsons and Hubbard. Now, say what you want about L. Ron Hubbard, being a quack, a horrible, a shoddy science fiction writer. He created something that's, a $1 billion a year empire.
Right.
And I mean, yeah, Miscavige took it from the ranks that it was to where it is today.
Right. And he did it on a bet.
Yeah.
He bet somebody he could create his own religion and people would follow it.
And they do blindly because it is a cult.
Yeah.
So Crowley hated Hubbard, though. Absolutely hated L. Ron Hubbard.
Do you think maybe he hated him because he saw him as a threat?
No, he hated him because, sort of, but he also didn't like Jack Parsons either because of this one fact. The two of them were trying magic that Crowley didn't believe that they were worthy of.
Oh, okay.
And they tried to do something which called a moonchild ritual. Now, what this is you take a pregnant woman, and the baby is supposed to be the vessel for Satan.
Oh God!
You do this whole ritual, and then the woman has the baby, and then when it comes out, it's supposed to be like Rosemary's Baby, where the devil possesses the child, and then grows up to be the living embodiment of
So
Satan.
basically, the baby pops out going, "Rock on, motherfuckers!"
Exactly. It's the Black Sabbath Born Again album cover.
Right.
But he was pissed that they even attempted this. Not only did they did it, and obviously we don't see Satan walking around here. It's not the illegitimate child of L. Ron Hubbard. But so Crowley just absolutely hated them for even attempting this.
Right.
But then,
no, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, then Parsons ends up hating L. Ron Hubbard because Parsons had a lot of money. Hubbard had nothing.
Right.
And L. Ron Hubbard steals Parsons' boat. Mm-hmm. And he had this fascination with boats. And then there's some other shit with L. Ron Hubbard. We'll do an episode on him eventually because he actually committed an act of war against the nation of Mexico from a submarine. So
Jesus.
He shot a torpedo onto at Mexico.
Oh Jesus!
When he was the commander of the submarine. But anyway.
So I want to go back and touch on something that we didn't really talk too much about, and this is a recurring theme. Like Crowley, I believe, got kicked out of the Golden Dawn because of his homosexual acts.
Mm-hmm.
And now, you have your homophobes and shit like that. But back then, 90% of the population were homophobes.
Yeah.
And the other, then 8% of them were homosexual. Then the other 2% were just didn't care.
Yeah.
So, it's a recurring theme in everything he does. Yes, he has sex with women, but I would say he probably had just as many male partners as he did female.
Yes. That's a safe assumption.
But he did this over and over again. He would just bounce back and forth, and he got hooked on heroin after that doctor prescribed it, and he did it for years.
Yeah.
Now, we look at, they must have a different type of heroin because you look at some of our people that we've lost to heroin, like Lane Staley, and
mm-hmm.
Didn't Weiland OD from it too?
Yes.
But back then they weren't overdosed. They weren't. He did it for years.
Yeah.
And functioned.
Well, part of it too is the quality. They're actually doing the drug.
Right.
And today there's so much shit in all these drugs that you don't even know what the fuck you're putting in your arm.
Right. But yeah, and then there was some chick that took him in and tried to clean him up, and then he knocked her up too.
Yeah.
Sanchez? I don't know.
You mean Desiree McClellan?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Or Deirdre McClellan, I'm sorry. But yeah, so she takes him in. She actually introduces herself to him before he's clean, and she said, she's a big fan, blah blah blah. She actually stays with him, invites him to come live with her, because at this point his money has long been gone.
Yeah.
And so this man is fucking destitute and poor. So
right.
She allows him to come in, and she spends, weeks getting him clean.
Right.
And then after somewhere in there, he ends up getting her pregnant.
Yeah.
Where she has his son, little Aleister.
Right. Well, and going back to some of the other stuff, like this is one of the things I heard that just cracked me up. At one point, he put out an ad for models that he could draw. He wanted dwarfs. He wanted, freaks. He wanted African Americans, only if they're ugly. This is what he put in his ad. And then some, model actually came in, and he developed a relationship with her, too. I can't remember who she was, though. But, yeah, he did a lot of weird shit, man.
Yeah.
He was also exhibited general misogyny, according to this guy Booth, who I don't know who that is. I don't care. But he believed it arose from a bad relationship with his mother. And someone else noted that Crowley largely accepted the notion and implicitly embodied in Victorian sexology of women as secondary social beings in terms of intellect and sensibility. Crowley described women as moral inferiors who had to be treated with firmness, kindness, and justice. If you wanted more reason to think this man was a piece of shit, there you go.
Right.
Just one more reason.
Yeah. If you needed one more, there it is. But in the 30s, there was a, you know, because we're in the latter part of his life. I mean, he was born in 1870s, and so
1875.
Yeah. So in the 30s, there was a journalist that labeled Crowley as a black magician and running cults and buying properties all over the world with his inheritance. It finally run dry. Well, Crowley ends up suing this guy for libel, but nothing that he put in the article wasn't shit that Crowley didn't put in his autobiographies. One of like 4 autobiographies that this motherfucker wrote too.
Right.
And
yeah, interesting reads, let me tell you.
So, later, so that was in the 30s. Now we're gonna just skip ahead to 1947.
Just a second. His son that he had with Deidre actually had a normal name. He was named Randall Gare, but Crowley nicknamed him Aleister Ataturk.
So his mom actually helped him out there.
Right. Okay, go to the 40s.
Okay. So in 1947, Crowley was 72 years old, slips into a coma, and succumbs to chronic bronchitis.
Right. Chronic bronchitis aggravated by pleurisy and myocardial degeneration.
Yeah. Meaning he had a hard life.
Right.
That was hard living. So I just kind of wanted to get to him being dead, because at his funeral, it was a small little funeral at a crematorium. About a dozen people attended, and they read excerpts from the Gnostic Mass, and the tabloids at the time labeled it a black mass.
Right.
But that's I mean, there's all these different things about how he actually died, but no, it was coma, dead, over with.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and I guess just be thankful he's gone. But unfortunately, his teachings live on.
They do. His works inspired, countless people, that's come after him. There's, Anton LaVey, obviously,
right,
who wrote the Satanic Bible and created the Church of Satan. A lot of his stuff is based in Crowley's works.
Right.
But Crowley, he inspired a lot of artists and musicians of the time. We mentioned Bowie before. We mentioned Led Zeppelin. We mentioned the Beatles.
Black Sabbath.
Black Sabbath. There's was it Mötley Crüe that had Aleister Fiend?
No.
Who had Aleister Fiend?
I don't know. Hold on, I'll Google it.
There was
Google it.
Yeah. So there was a mascot for a band that was called Aleister Fiend. But so his legacy still lives on today.
Right.
Not that two words.
2 words. It was just Aleister and then the word fiend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not finding anything on it.
Oh.
Diary of a Drug Fiend. Quotes by Aleister Crowley. Yeah, I'm not seeing it anywhere, man. Maybe I'm just putting it. Maybe I can't fucking type. But yeah, he influenced tons of shit. Lots of drug use, lots of prostitution. And he, like we talked about earlier, he claimed to actually have known Jack the Ripper.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. We got to do something to pick this one up because it seems to be dropping. Energy level depleting.
Right. And so, but anyway, Crowley, not only did he, there's a lot of shit out there that, I mean, like chaos magic, there's a whole path of magic that's based on just what Crowley did. You know,
right.
There's pomp and circumstance on the one side, and then his sex magic with the pomp and circumstance on the other side. Countless magicians and stuff that have been in movies, like the I think was it Christopher Lee that was in? No, who was that? In the Ninth Gate with Johnny Depp, the main villain in that, the guy who ends up doing the ritual, pours gasoline on himself. That was his character's kind of based on Crowley.
Right. Well, and you know, well, brain just shut off. But I mean, he's a name that's going to live on well past us.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's people like him, and you know, we have all these people that just basically did shitty things, and that they live on in infamy because of the shitty things they did. But you know, we only got like one Gandhi or one Mother Teresa. You know what I mean?
Right. So I just found something that's kind of interesting I didn't see earlier. The manor that it's called the Boskin House in Loch Ness is actually for sale right now.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
The house has been decimated by fire. There's no roof anymore.
Yep.
But you can actually buy the actual land. And they said he's supposedly Crowley had summoned 115 different spirits, including Lucifer himself.
Yeah, he did a lot of weird shit. He even he met with like Aldous Huxley and Alfred Adler. Yeah, he did a lot of weird shit. Let's see. I'm gonna read this. It's from his libel case. I have been over 40 years engaged in the administration of law in one capacity or another. I thought that I knew of every conceivable form of wickedness. I thought that everything which was vicious and bad had been produced at one time or another before me. I have learned in this case that we can always learn something more if we live long enough. I have never heard such dreadful, horrible, blasphemous, and abominable stuff as that which has been produced by the man Crowley, who describes himself to you as the greatest living poet. And that's by the Justice Swift in his libel case.
Oh, nice. No.
Yeah, but I mean, what else can you say about Crowley? I mean,
but you can buy that. I just finally found the price here. You can buy it's 23 acres of cursed land in Loch Ness. Can be yours for £510,000.
No, thank you.
I don't know what that is in our money, but that's more than I'm willing to pay.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, you have a little section here on his political views, but basically his whole views was just he wanted to be counterculture, basically. You know, whatever was going on, he wanted to do the opposite of it. He didn't want to fit into the norms.
He is that kid that you went to high school with that like, oh, I don't do that. I do this. You know, I'm weird. I'm different. I'm different. I'm weird. I'm artsy. I'm different. I'm weird. No, you're not. You're no different. You're like those 15 other kids over there that stand by themselves.
Right. Yeah, that was me. But I mean, he even, you know, there's even times that he actually liked Nazism and communism, at least what they made him curious. And it was the anti-Christian position and stuff like that made him curious about it. And he described democracy as an imbecile and nauseating cult of weakness.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, and commented that the Book of Law proclaimed that there's a master and there's a slave, the noble and the serf, the lone wolf and the herd.
Ah.
And
So,
he's influenced by the work of Nietzsche and by social Darwinism.
I'm sure there's some Machiavelli in his
Oh yeah.
his readings. But so I did find this though that I thought was kind of interesting, that in the last months of his life, he actually, he supposedly had like a deathbed confession where he admit that he had regrets on the selfishness that he had when he was in his youth.
Right. Well, now going back to the spy thing, there's also thoughts, words, they don't work today. There's theories that he was responsible for the sinking of, what was that, Heather? Sinking that boat that got American, sinking the Lusitania to get America to the World War One.
Oh wow. Yeah, if you don't know, the Lusitania was shot down. It was sunk by the German Navy, and it had like 1,500 civilians that died on it. Like, it was actually more people died in that than actually died in the Titanic.
Right.
When it sank.
Well, the theory is he passed on the information to the Germans of where this thing was.
Oh. So, I keep seeing all these different. I kept seeing all this stuff about words not working, about how he was working both sides, and he was an agent of disinformation.
He's basically an agent of chaos. I mean, let's just put it how it really is. I mean, that's who he was. That's who he thrived on being. He thrived on being different from everybody else. If that means he had to drink menstrual blood or cat blood, that's what he would do.
Yeah.
He was just a sick, twisted, fucked up individual.
Yes, he was. So, with that, we'll just say I'm gonna throw in the towel on Crowley.
Yeah. So yeah, Crowley, bad.
Yeah. So there you have it. That's the story of Aleister Crowley, and we just want you to take the time to go and find out some of this information yourself. Go to your public library, use Wikipedia, use Google, find out what you can. There's several websites out there that have a lot of this stuff. There's tons of YouTube videos out there, and just be forewarned that we've talked a lot about menstrual blood and butt fucking and anal rape, and because that was a big part of Crowley's.
Yeah, and and I'm just gonna apologize to all of our listeners for the energy level here. I'm fighting a sinus infection, and I've been trying to power through it. So you saw us getting kind of lost at times, and I blame it on me.
No worries. It's also the subject matter. Crowley's it's difficult.
Yeah, it's dark shit, man. Once you start getting into it, it's I mean, it's just fucked up. I mean, and the fact that he still has influence in so many things even today. It's just scary.
It really is. It really, really is. And it's kind of interesting to me in all this too, that there's so much in this time period about occultism and people that were in it. The Nazis were huge into occult. He was huge into the occult. There was obviously the Hermetic Order, the Golden Dawn, and I'm sure there's the Masons had occult dealings, and there was just a lot of that shit that went on around that. And like we talked about before, that information you had to seek out and you had to go find. It's not at your fingertips like it is today.
Right. And and it's odd because you bring that up, but if you kind of look through history, you can see patterns and you can see cycles. And that was where that cycle was at that point. And I think it came out again in like the 70s, somewhere between the 60s and the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Because, then you'd have underground occult bookstores pop up here and there back when we were kids. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh yeah, I definitely do.
And then like when I graduated from high school, it was kind of at its peak, and then it's kind of gone away. And I think it's resurfacing now, but not as, occult per se, but more as like the universal line of thinking.
Yeah.
Where it's more of, being more self-aware and just being a better person,
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot more people are going towards that path than the occult path today.
You go back and listen to our episode about law of attraction, and a lot of people are doing a lot more personal self-discovery, and there's kind of a fine line between finding personal self-discovery and being selfish.
Right.
So really toe the line when you're doing this, and remember that you have people around you that need you and you need them.
Right.
Now, and I just want to share this real quick. This is there's no front page to it. It's just called the Occult Library. Mm-hmm. And it's a free app. Just go to the Amazon or the Google store or iTunes store and Occult Library, and it's got most of the books that I found in here in PDF form that you can just read on your phone.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass.
There's a lot of other books in there too. It was weird because I was going through there, and the Anarchist Cookbook is actually one of the files in there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We had friends that had their mom owned a bookstore, and she thought it was funny. She saw it in one of the catalogs to order books for her thing, so she actually ordered a copy of it for her kids. But then so she would have it on the shelf, more people coming to buy it, and then the police realized after a while, somebody tipped them off that there's this book that has cooking with marijuana and building bombs on this little bookshelf there. So they didn't stop her from selling it, but anytime that she sold a copy after a certain point, she actually had to send the name and their information that who purchased it to the local police station.
Jesus Christ!
And that was in the 80s.
Yeah, Big Brother is always watching you.
Right. Yeah, that was only 4 years after 1984. So.
Right. Yeah. So. All right. With that being said, we're going to end tonight's episode, folks. We appreciate the listeners, and peace out. Love you guys.
All right. Insert tagline here. Till next week.